The Cook. A historical fiction of love, identity and fate by S.J. Jeppsson. Chapter 34. The Bride. The days following the engagement ball were a blur of whispered congratulations and the rustling of silk and lace as endless fittings were arranged. The house pulsed with energy, the heartbeat of New York's elite buzzing with the anticipation of what would be the most celebrated wedding of the year. Kate had stepped so deeply into Lydia's life that she no longer knew where the deception ended and where she began. Each morning, Thomas awaited her in the breakfast parlour, impeccably dressed in his morning suit, his crisp white shirt collar brushing against the soft wool of his waistcoat. He would stand as she entered, offering her a warm smile, and as he reached for the silver coffee pot, his fingers would barely graze hers. A fleeting touch, but one deliberate enough to unsettle her. His voice was gentle, his laughter easy, and the way he looked at her, as if she were his entire world, made her feel both cherished and utterly trapped. For years, she had dreamed of escape, of freedom beyond the confines of the life she had known in tiny Titchfield. But now she had wandered into Lydia's gilded cage, its walls draped in silk and gold, its bars so finely wrought they vanished to every eye but her own. And the longer she remained, the harder they seemed to close. And yet, Thomas was not cruel. He did not treat her like a possession to be paraded, nor did he demand affection she could not yet offer. Instead, he moved with patience, allowing her space to breathe, to adjust, to become comfortable with him. And that, she realized, was what made it all so much harder. Because if he had been distant, cold, indifferent, she could have held on to her resolve. But Thomas was none of those things, and that was what terrified her most. Evelyn had been watching. She was not intrusive, nor did she ask pointed questions, but her presence lingered, her knowing eyes flickering over Kate whenever she faltered, whenever she hesitated before answering a question, whenever she forgot the smallest detail of Lydia's past. One afternoon, as Kate sat beneath the ivy-covered pergola in the garden, her fingers idly twisting the elegant ring round her finger, Evelyn approached. The sun was soft and golden, filtering through the leaves, dappling the stone pathway with patterns of light and shadow. The air smelled of fresh roses, damp earth, and the hint of lilac carried by the wind. Evelyn knelt beside a cluster of budding roses, her fingers deftly trimming a few errant leaves, before she spoke.
You're very quiet these days, miss.
Her tone was gentle but weighted. Most young women would be glowing with excitement over an engagement like this. Kate forced a small, practiced smile, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear.
I suppose I still can't believe it.
Evelyn's hand stilled for only a fraction of a second, but it was enough.
Can you not?
She smiled.
Well, if you're considering changing your mind, now is the time.
She teased. Kate's breath hitched slightly, the pressure of the diamond against her skin suddenly unbearable. She hesitated, and Evelyn's gaze lifted, green eyes sharp and searching. There was something knowing there. And then there was Sebastian. There were moments when she caught him watching her from across the room, his gaze steady rather than sharp. Not the look of a man hunting for flaws, but of someone taking stock, quietly measuring what she carried on her shoulders. He noticed the way she faltered at certain names, the way her voice trembled when she spoke of Lydia's past. He noticed, and chose not to speak. It was not indifference. It was something else. His silence felt like a kind of wordless promise. I will not betray you. Kate could feel it. He noticed the way she hesitated when names from Lydia's past were mentioned. He noticed the subtle stumbles in her accent, the details she glossed over too quickly, the stories she could not elaborate upon, he knew. Maybe not the full truth, but enough to recognize that she was not who she claimed to be. And yet, he had not exposed her. She wanted to ask why, to drag the truth into the light, but the question itself felt too dangerous to voice aloud. The days passed in a delicate waltz of lace, letters, and longing. Thomas, ever the perfect gentleman, continued to court her as if they were not already engaged. He did not rush her. He did not pressure her. Instead, he gave her the space to fall in love with him on her own. And she feared that she was. Each evening, he would escort her on walks through the rose garden, recounting stories of his travels through Europe, his plans for the future, his dreams of a home filled with laughter and warmth. Beneath the glow of a gaslit lantern, his voice dropped to something softer, something more vulnerable.
Our marriage won't be a marriage of obligation, Lydia,
he told her, his fingers brushing lightly against hers as they strolled beneath the moonlight.
I want you to know that. I want a true partnership, a marriage of respect, of love.
Kate's breath caught in her throat. How cruel fate was to place her in the arms of a man she could have truly loved, only for it all to be built on a lie. She lowered her gaze, swallowing past the tightness in her chest.
I am grateful for you, Thomas,
she whispered. He smiled, lifting her gloved hand to his lips.
And I, for you, my love.
Her heart winced at his words. She wanted desperately to tell him the truth, to tell him that she was not Lydia. She was just Kate, a baker's daughter from a humble town, only a few hours' journey from London. But if he could find it in his heart to love her anyway, perhaps. That night, after an evening spent entertaining guests in the parlour, Thomas walked her to her bedroom door. The house was quiet, the corridor bathed in the flickering glow of a single-wall sconce. He took her hands in his thumb grazing over her knuckles before he lifted them to his lips, lingering there for a breath longer than necessary.
I'm very excited to spend the rest of my life with you, Lydia,
he murmured, his voice low, intimate. Kate managed a smile, though her chest felt unbearably tight.
And I, with you.
She paused.
Good night, Thomas.
He stepped back, his blue eyes holding hers for a moment longer, as if memorizing her face, as if searching for something unspoken. Then, with one final nod, he turned and walked away, disappearing down the long, dimly lit hallway. Kate closed the door behind her, resting her forehead against the cool wood, exhaling a shuddering breath. She had accepted this life. She had done the proper thing. But at what cost? The more time they spent together, the more Thomas changed. He wasn't just a man fulfilling an obligation. He wasn't just a fiancé going through the motions. He was in love. And Kate knew it. She saw it in the way his gaze softened when he looked at her. In the way his touch lingered just a moment longer than necessary. In the way he said her name, not with formality but with familiarity, as if she truly belonged to him. And she realized with a terrible pang. She was starting to care for him too. Not as a fiancé, not as a future husband, but as a good man. A man she was deceiving. A man who deserved the truth. But if she told him, if she let the truth slip from her lips, she would lose everything. And so she kept the lie alive. The late afternoon sun stretched golden over the sprawling gardens of Weatherby House, casting long shadows through the perfectly trimmed hedges and trellises, heavy with climbing roses. The air smelled of earth, rain-soaked leaves, and the aroma of springtime blooms. Kate ran her fingers gently along a soft lilac petal, its delicate fragrance wrapping around her like a whisper. Thomas, walking beside her, watched with quiet amusement as she reached out to the trailing vines of wisteria, their purple clusters hanging like lavender-draped chandeliers.
I'm happy to see you like flowers,
he noted, his tone light but tinged with curiosity. Kate smiled, letting her fingertips linger on a bloom.
I love them,
she admitted.
Not just for their beauty, but because they remind me that nothing stays the same. The seasons change, The flowers fade, and then, somehow, they bloom again.
Thomas's gaze softened, his usual formal demeanour giving way to something more thoughtful, more open.
What would you choose if you could have a garden of your own?
Kate turned toward him, tilting her head slightly.
You mean at Hollingsworth Estate?
He nodded. She considered for a moment before speaking.
Roses, of course, but not the perfect uniform ones that noble women love. Wild roses, the kind that don't ask permission before climbing, that make their own place.
A faint smirk touched his lips.
So, a bit untamed, just like you?
He questioned playfully. Kate laughed, nudging him playfully with her shoulder.
And calla lilies,
she continued,
for their grace, and wisteria, because they grow best when given something strong to hold on to.
Thomas's expression shifted, something unreadable flickering in his eyes.
And perhaps lilacs?
He prompted, noting the way she had lingered by them earlier. Kate's smile softened.
My mother loved...
She stopped abruptly, realising what she had said.
I mean, when I was a little girl,
Had he noticed? She continued.
She used to press them between the pages of books. Whenever I opened one of her old novels, the scent would linger, as if...
Thomas was quiet for a long moment, his eyes tracing her face, the way the fading sunlight turned her hair to gold. Then, with quiet certainty, he reached for her hand.
When we return to London,
he declared,
I will fill our home with roses, calla lilies, wisteria, and lilacs.
Kate blinked, momentarily stunned by the intimacy of the promise. A home, their home. Something warm unfurled in her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name. And in that moment, beneath the golden spring sky, with flowers blooming all around them, Kate let herself believe in the future he painted. A future of love, of laughter, of a home that smelled of lilacs and wisteria. A future that, in another life, might have been real. That evening, Weatherby House gleamed brighter than usual. Every chandelier blazed, every polished banister shone, every servant moved with a precision rehearsed again and again under Margaret Weatherby's vigilant eye. For this was no ordinary dinner. The Earl and Countess of Grantham had crossed the Atlantic to attend their son's wedding, and tonight, Weatherby House was determined to meet English nobility on equal terms. The guests assembled in the drawing room, the Countess entering first. She was tall and slender, her posture so perfect it seemed a lesson to the room. Diamonds winked at her ears, but her gown, a muted shade of mauve silk, spoke of restraint rather than display. The Earl followed, his silver-streaked hair and stern jaw lending him an air of gravitas that needed no ornament. He carried himself like a man who had never once doubted his place in the world. Margaret all but glowed as she stepped forward, Charles at her side.
Lord and Lady Grantham, we are so pleased to welcome you to Weatherby House,
she announced, her voice honeyed with pride.
May I present my daughter, Lydia Jane Weatherby.
Kate dipped into a graceful curtsy, her pulse quickening. When she rose, the Earl was watching her intently, his gaze steady and unreadable. At length, he inclined his head.
You have grown from the girl in your portrait into a most elegant young lady,
he said, his baritone as measured as it was commanding.
Paintings are but shadows of truth, but I see now that yours did not flatter nearly enough.
Kate lowered her gaze, murmuring her thanks though her breath caught in her throat. That portrait, Lydia's likeness, hung in Weatherby House still. She was only its reflection, standing beneath its gaze. The Countess studied her in silence for a moment longer before offering a faint smile.
It is a pleasure to finally meet you, my dear. I have long told Thomas that America produces beauty as well as enterprise.
Margaret's laughter chimed at that, pleased beyond measure. Finally, dinner was announced, and the company gathered in the great dining hall. The table glittered with silver and crystal, the air heavy with the scent of roasted pheasant and roses. Margaret had arranged the seating with careful intent. The Countess at her right hand, the Earl at Charles's left, and Thomas squarely beside Kate. Conversation began with formalities, the Countess inquiring about the recent engagement ball, Margaret extolling its every success.
2 pineapples, imported at dreadful expense.
She recounted, drawing a murmur of impressed approval from the Countess.
Nothing was too much for such an occasion.
The Countess dabbed delicately at her lips with a linen napkin, her cool gaze softening as she set it aside.
And the bridal party?
She asked, her voice measured but deliberate.
I assume all preparations are in place.
Indeed,
Margaret replied, the glow of satisfaction never leaving her face.
I received word just this morning that Miss Rosalind Worth and Miss Arabella Ashcombe will arrive in New York on Wednesday. Their families were delighted by the invitation, of course. Both young ladies are eager to serve as bridesmaids.
The Countess inclined her head, clearly approving of the names.
Excellent choices. Miss Worth's mother has long been a fixture in London society, and the Ashcombes are well regarded. Their presence will lend the proper gravity to the ceremony.
Margaret continued smoothly.
I trust their inclusion will reflect well on both our families.
Quite,
the Countess murmured, her approval cool but unmistakable. She turned to Kate.
Appearances matter, Lydia, especially when one is introducing a daughter into one of England's oldest houses.
Kate lowered her gaze to her plate, her heart fluttering strangely. Rosalind Worth and Arabella Ashcombe, strangers she had never met, would walk ahead of her on the most important day of her life. Perhaps that was for the best. Friends might look too closely. The Earl, however, was less interested in fruit than in legacy. His questions, when they came, were directed at Kate.
Tell me, Miss Weatherby.
He said across the table, his knife and fork set neatly upon his plate.
Do you imagine yourself suited to life in England? The seasons are harsher, the duties unrelenting. It is a different rhythm than what you know here.
Kate swallowed.
I imagine I shall learn, my lord. And I shall endeavour to honour both your family and your country.
He replied, neither approving nor disapproving, but noting her words with quiet precision. The Countess, by contrast, leaned forward slightly, her tone softer.
And what of children? I should very much like to see grandchildren filling Hollingsworth Hall again. It has been too quiet for too long.
Kate's cheeks flushed. She managed a poised smile.
In time, my lady. God willing.
Thomas, sensing her unease, interjected with warmth.
You will find Lydia possesses a quick wit and a gentle heart, Mother. She makes every place brighter simply by being there.
His words, so effortlessly kind, eased the tension at once. Kate turned her face toward him, the gratitude in her eyes unfeigned. The meal unfolded with more of the same. Margaret drawing comparisons between Weatherby House and the great estates of England. The Countess responding with cool courtesy. The Earl occasionally pressing Kate with questions that felt like small tests. Through it all, Thomas softened the edges, weaving charm and humour into the evening until the silences grew less heavy. At last, as the servants cleared away the final course, the Earl lifted his glass.
To the joining of our houses,
he said simply. His voice carried no flourish, no excess, only the weight of tradition.
May it prove a blessing to both sides of the sea.
The Countess touched her glass to his, and Margaret, glowing, followed suit. Kate raised hers as well, her hand steady, though her heart raced. For the Earl's words were not merely a toast, they were a benediction, a binding. And she, Kate Cook, not Lydia Weatherby, was the one upon whom it fell. Later that night, once the final carriage had disappeared down the long drive and Weatherby House had settled into a hush, Kate sat before the vanity in Lydia's bedroom, her thoughts still tangled in the evening's conversations. The lamplight was soft and golden, throwing gentle shadows against the carved mahogany panels as Evelyn moved quietly about the room. She slipped the pearl buttons of Kate's gown from their loops one by one, her movements careful, almost reverent, as if aware that this life of silk and ceremony might dissolve if she tugged too hard.
You were remarkable tonight.
Evelyn murmured as she lifted the lace bodice from Kate's shoulders and laid it carefully across a chaise.
The Countess was watching you the whole evening, and she didn't look disappointed once.
Kate let out a faint laugh, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes.
I suppose that's the best I can hope for, not disappointing the Countess.
She likes you,
Evelyn said simply.
They all do. And the bridesmaids, Miss Worth and Miss Ashcombe, they sound very grand.
I'm sure they are,
Kate replied, fingers twisting absently in her lap.
But if things were different, if my life had been different, I might have asked 2 other girls.
Evelyn's hands paused in their work.
Other girls?
Mary and Lottie.
A smile tugged at the corners of her mouth, tender and fleeting.
Friends. In England.
Then why not ask them?
Evelyn asked gently.
Surely they'd be delighted.
Kate hesitated, her gaze falling to the embroidered hem of her dressing gown as she considered how to answer.
They're abroad, I think,
she said at last.
Their families decided to travel after the term ended.
Evelyn raised a brow.
So they couldn't make the crossing?
Kate shook her head.
No, and, truth be told...
Her voice grew softer, the words slower, as if she were choosing them with care.
I don't think...
She swallowed.
I don't think my mother would have approved. They're respectable, of course, but not quite the sort of people she wishes around an occasion like this. Not essential.
Evelyn was silent for a long moment, then gave a small, knowing nod.
I see.
They would have stood with me if they could,
Kate whispered.
But they won't be here.
The room was very still. The lamplight caught in the glass of the vanity mirror, softening the lines of Kate's reflection until she looked like someone else entirely, a stranger in silk and diamonds. She turned slightly in her chair, heart thudding with an idea so fragile it felt dangerous to speak aloud.
Evelyn.
Yes, miss?
Kate swallowed, her throat suddenly dry.
I don't suppose...
She hesitated.
That is, I don't suppose you might... Would you stand with me on the day?
Evelyn blinked, caught off guard.
Me? Oh, I couldn't possibly. I'm not...
You're Evelyn,
Kate interrupted gently.
And you're the one who's been here with me every day. You know me better than anyone in this house.
Evelyn shook her head faintly.
But I'm a maid.
You're my friend,
Kate corrected softly.
The closest thing I have to family here. Well, I mean, the closest friend I have here, and I can't imagine standing there without you.
The protest in Evelyn's eyes melted, replaced by something warmer, something that shimmered between pride and disbelief. Slowly, she nodded.
When you put it that way, I would be honoured.
Kate exhaled, the tension in her chest easing into something gentler, steadier.
Thank you, Evelyn. It means the world to me.
Evelyn drew the curtains closed, dampening the sound of the crickets chirping outside, and the silence in the room felt different now. No longer heavy, but comforting. When Evelyn bid her good night and departed with a soft click of the bedroom door, Kate remained seated before the vanity, her reflection flickering in the lamplight like an echo. She inhaled slowly, trying to steady the tremor beneath her ribs, but the quiet of the room only seemed to amplify the truth she carried like a stone. She rose at last, slipping into her robe, and stepped into the dim hallway. Somewhere in the house, a clock struck 11, a deep, resonant sound that rolled through the corridors, like a reminder of time slipping faster than she could hold it. She descended the stairs slowly, seeking air, movement, anything that might keep her from drowning in her own thoughts. When she reached the writing room, the door stood half open. Light spilled out in a warm rectangle across the hall. She stepped closer. Voices drifted, low, feminine, and unmistakably refined. Inside, Margaret Weatherby and the Countess of Grantham sat together at Margaret's writing desk, the two women framed by stacks of envelopes embossed with crests, gilt edges, and heavy wax seals. A pot of tea steamed gently beside them, though neither seemed to notice it. Margaret looked up at Kate with a bright, inviting smile.
Lydia, my dear, come in, come in. We were just reviewing the final RSVPs.
The Countess inclined her head in greeting, her posture perfect even in the informal hour.
It is astonishing,
she remarked, lifting a card between elegant fingers.
I have rarely seen such swift replies. New York society seems positively breathless with anticipation.
Kate stepped into the room, her gaze falling over the mountain of elegant replies. Each one meant for Lydia Weatherby. Each one assuming her presence at the altar. Beyond the writing room, through the half-open door of the adjoining drawing room, Kate could hear Charles Weatherby and the Earl speaking in low tones, their words punctuated by the soft clink of crystal and the quiet pour of brandy, the masculine murmur of their conversation, the weight of expectations, alliances, legacy hummed in the room like a second heartbeat. Margaret lifted a sealed reply with a pleased hum.
The Cabots,
she announced.
Naturally.
The Countess's lips curved faintly.
I would have been surprised had they declined. Caroline Cabot is ambitious.
Margaret gave a genteel laugh.
Ambitious and punctual. A rare pairing indeed.
Kate hesitated before speaking.
I had the pleasure of being seated beside Caroline at the ball. She seemed very interested in Thomas.
Margaret's eyes flicked up, but it was the Countess who answered, her voice cool and precise.
My dear, Miss Caroline Cabot is interested in everyone who might advance her position. It is her greatest talent and her greatest flaw.
She tapped a single manicured finger against the RSVP card.
Pay her no mind. Ambitious women often mistake visibility for influence.
Margaret laughed lightly, delighted by the remark. The Countess continued more softly.
Should she attempt anything untoward at the wedding, you need only smile. Nothing undermines a schemer quite so effectively as serenity.
Kate nodded, though serenity felt like the last thing she possessed. Her voice slipped out before she could stop it.
Do you think it will all go well?
Margaret laughed warmly.
Oh, darling, everything will be perfect.
But the Countess did not laugh. She studied Kate, truly studied her, and replied with a steadiness that felt strangely grounding.
Weddings do not go well because of flowers or menus or seating charts. They go well because the bride decides they will.
She folded an RSVP card with deliberate care.
Hold your composure, Lydia. Hold it, and no one will dare question you.
Kate's breath caught. She was reminded of something Lydia had told her the day they boarded the Titanic.
Confidence is a costume, Kate. Yours just needs a bit of tailoring.
Kate smiled at the memory while Margaret moved to the next card.
The Whitneys, the Van Allens, the Dunhams, all attending.
Her pen scratched across the ledger, a neat, confident flourish for each name. The Countess tapped a smaller stack set aside.
These are the families crossing the Atlantic,
she explained.
Their ship departed Southampton last week. They will arrive Friday morning in time for the weekend's events.
Margaret nodded approvingly.
The Worths and the Ashcombs, of course. Oh, and the Fenwicks.
Her eyes shone with satisfaction.
Such distinguished names. They'll be attending both the Astor funeral in the morning and the wedding in the afternoon.
Kate's heart thudded in her chest. The reality of it pressed in. Hundreds of miles travelled, families crossing oceans, all converging on a single day that had never been meant for her. Margaret reached for another envelope.
Oh, a declination. From the Montagues.
She made a sympathetic noise, though Kate could hear no true disappointment in it.
Prior obligations in London,
The Countess supplied.
though the message adds that they offer their warmest wishes to the bride and groom.
A pause.
Socially, a decline from the Montagues is hardly a slight. Their presence would not have altered the tone of the room.
Margaret waved her hand lightly, agreeing.
No matter. The guest list is quite full regardless.
Kate's gaze drifted over the piles. Families from New York, from Boston, from Newport, from London, from Paris, from estates older than her entire village. And all of them, every last one, expected Lydia Weatherby to stand at the altar. Margaret glanced up, her eyes warm and proud.
You see, my darling, everyone is coming. This wedding will be the event of the season.
The Countess offered a gentle, approving nod.
And you, my dear, will be at the centre of it.
Kate swallowed, forcing a smile that felt brittle as glass. The Countess regarded Kate for a long, thoughtful moment before speaking again.
Tell me, Lydia, are you looking forward to it?
Her tone was soft, almost kind, and yet Kate felt the questions settle like a weight upon her shoulder. There was no escape in it, no room for hesitation. Kate managed a small, practiced smile.
Of course, my lady. I am honoured and grateful.
The Countess's eyes narrowed just slightly, as if detecting a tremor beneath the words.
Gratitude is admirable,
She replied.
but happiness is essential. A bride who walks to the altar without joy invites whispers, far sharper than envy.
Kate's heart beat hard against her ribs, but she nodded, forcing her breath to steady.
I assure you, my lady, I will give them no reason to whisper.
The Countess's faint smile suggested she heard more than Kate intended to reveal. But she let the matter rest. Across the room, the voices of Charles and the Earl rose softly. A discussion about reputation, about duty, about the future Lady Hollingsworth. The title hit her like a blow. Margaret turned back to her ledger, humming as she wrote. The Countess sipped her tea, serene and observant. Kate stood between them, between two women who believed wholeheartedly in a future that could never be hers. And as she gazed at the sea of elegant envelopes, she felt the walls of Weatherby House close around her, like the clasp of a necklace she couldn't remove. A wedding was coming, a grand, glittering, impossible wedding. And fate, relentless fate, as sure and steady as the clock that now struck midnight, was already guiding Catherine Cook, the baker's daughter from the tiny village of Titchfield, toward its altar.